Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Ruska, and I'm here with Dr. Charlie Cartwright, and we're having conversations, not confrontations. Welcome, Dr. Charlie.
Julie, it's great to be here as always, and good to see you once again.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk today about some topics that keep coming up that tend to be a little bit controversial as far as special rights versus human rights, Black History Month versus just general history. You'll get on a site like LinkedIn and it'll be like Black members to follow instead of inspirational leaders to follow. Some people will say Black Lives Matters, and then other people were like, well, all lives matter. And there are all these issues going on. And so what led me into this topic was diversity training. Right now, you're getting called a lot in to do diversity training for different businesses, organizations, police stations. And obviously, the reason that you're being called in for that is because you're a Black man. No one's going to call me up and be like, hey, Julie, come do a diversity training for us. So, how do you feel about that? Like, do you appreciate that they're calling you in, or do you feel like you're getting called in because you're Black? And does it
Yeah,
bother you?
that's a great question, and I actually, when I first started getting the calls, at first I was like, oh, this is great. Then I thought about it, I was like, this is not great because the reason why I'm getting called because we're having all this unrest, right?
Right.
And I'm a Black male,
Right.
so I remember thinking, and it's not my business plan does not have that in there, right? This is not a part of my business plan, and I didn't feel good about it, right? And I remember talking to a friend of mine, my friend Alvin Brown. We'll have to have him on as a guest. That we have our Sunday call every Sunday. We have a 2-hour FaceTime call. He's out of Toronto, Canada, and we talk about issues, leadership, fatherhood, just so many different things. But it's an accountability call, and also I learn from him and he learns from me, and it's just a great exchange. And so I brought this topic up, and I said, I'm getting these calls that I don't feel good about. And he looked at me and he's like, listen, he's like, this is what you do. You're the man for the job. You have the perspective, you have the training, you put in all this time and energy into these topics. Who better to have the discussion, because it needs to be had. The training needs to be had. And so you're the most qualified, which there's no question in my mind about that, because I've put in the
Right, of course.
I've got the onion skins on the wall, right? I've got all that. And so he said, he reminded me that he said, Martin Luther King was a preacher, Gandhi was a lawyer. Okay. And that's not what they had envisioned. However, they were called.
Yeah.
They were called.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've been called. So I really respect his opinion, and I think that's true. So I do feel like, from my perspective, it is great. I've got some police officers, two cities, two young small communities of, so about 24 officers I'm going to have in this training, and they're all going to be Caucasian. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to have an exchange and a dialogue, and for them to have a safe place to ask questions and get an educated, balanced answer. So I think that's good. I will tell you about an opportunity I had with a city. I won't name this city, but it was a city. And I was bidding for this training, and it was a large year-long project. So it was a substantial dollar amount, 6 figures, and I was part of the bidding process. Well, one of their questions was, are you a minority-owned business? I'm like, well, yes, check the box. Well, then once I checked that box, well, you need to prove it. So you want to see my driver's license, or what? So they asked for all of this documentation, and so I sent back a note, and my note was, hey, I'm going to enter into the bidding process for this, but I want to be awarded the contract because I'm the best, not because I'm Black. So, period. I'm going to win this because I'm the best. And so
Absolutely.
And then, I didn't receive a response on that. Of course, I didn't win the bid either, but that's not how I want to win business. And I know there's people that out there that don't have a problem with that. I do.
Mm.
Now, I know the reason why that's in place is because of, we've had a problem in the past where people weren't given an opportunity. So, hey, we're going to mandate that a certain percentage of government contracts will go to
Right.
minority businesses. And so it's a great concept. However, it's a great concept, but it's discriminatory in nature, right? And
Right.
so what I want is for us to figure out how to create a level playing field. Then may the best team win. Okay, that's how it should be. And I understand the reality is not that, and that we have to be able to use our minds to think about processes to hold these organizations accountable in this. And there has to be a way to logically do that. And then when people violate laws, violate civil rights, then the penalty should be extraordinarily high so that they don't want to do that. But I don't like the mandated process there. Now, in the trainings that I'm conducting, those aren't being mandated. I'm being recommended. I've
Yeah.
been I've got them through recommendations, and I've got them through recommendations because my work is great. So I feel good about that, and I know the training is going to be the best that's out there. So that's my view on that.
Right. And there is, I mean, there's a lot of merit to these police stations being all Caucasian and bringing in someone of a different race to give them a different perspective. And I didn't want to imply that that wasn't okay. I just wanted to ask, it's just curiosity. Um, and I have to ask before we move on. You said onion skins on the walls. What does that mean?
So you never heard a diploma referred to as an onion skin?
No.
You know how the diplomas, that funny paper? Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Okay, I thought it had like some big meaning. I'm like, I don't know what the
No,
onion skins are, but
yeah, it's just
there you go.
another
See, there's
an old, and I'm sure that's probably an old term for diplomas, but they've got a different feel to them. And so I've got a couple of diplomas and a couple of degrees, and so yeah, onion skins on the wall as
that's
the
good.
diplomas.
That's good to know. See, that's why it's so important to have conversations around things, right? To
Yeah,
clear up any
yeah.
misunderstanding. So I want to move beyond this discussion
Can I make
in,
one more
yeah,
comment though before we move on?
yeah,
I think it's important, especially like these law enforcement officers, they have questions. Okay, and these are from small communities, right? They have questions, they've seen things, they've heard things. The best resource for answers to their questions is not going to be a textbook.
right.
It'll be another human being standing in front of them, like myself. That's the best source of information they're going to have. I don't want them to flip on Fox, CNN, or any of these other networks that are somehow coloring the conversation, no pun intended.
Mm.
That hey, they can have a safe space to ask questions, and we can have an exchange, and I think that it'll
Right.
be beneficial not only for myself but for the officers, and that's the whole key to it all. So
Okay. So you brought up something about, wanting to be the best man for a job. And I don't want this to be just about you. I want it to be a bigger conversation. How do you feel about things like affirmative action, quotas? Like my daughter's applying for colleges right now. And when they're having Zoom calls, because obviously they can't do in-person visits, there's a lot of talk about we want diversity, we want diversity, we want diversity, which makes some people feel like there's an unfair advantage there.
yeah, and again, the spirit of it is good in giving
Right.
opportunities where they've been missed in the past, and so I've heard Caucasian people say, "Well, hey, this is reverse discrimination,"
Right.
and you can see that's a valid point. At the
Mhm.
same time, there has been a home court advantage for centuries, and
Yeah.
so if this somehow helps out in the grand scheme of things, then I think that's a good thing. But I don't. Again, I don't. I'm not on any list for minority contractors. I'm not on a one, not any. I've not filled that
Right.
paperwork out because I refuse to go about it that way. I absolutely refuse to participate in that. There are
Yeah.
people being awarded contracts and they're not the best contractor, right? And I
Right.
don't, and so that's my choice. And
Mhm.
any jobs that I'm awarded is because I've been recommended or found because of the quality of my work, right?
Yeah.
And my character, right? And that's what Martin Luther King talked about, that he
Yes.
wanted his children to live in a world where they're judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So I
Absolutely.
really believe that. And so if that means that I'm leaving money on the table, so be it,
Right.
right? That I will build the business the right way, the organic way, and the money will come, and the contracts will come, and for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's my view, and I'm not throwing stones at anyone that has
Right.
chosen that path, but I'm not a path of least resistance guy. So
Yeah.
that's not me.
Yeah. And so I think this goes into all the other issues, like why we have Black History Month instead of just history. And I do think it's what you were saying about it has been so weighted heavily. I mean, in my childhood, I heard about who? Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, but Martin Luther King. That's about it. And so, we've talked about this in the past, the importance of Black History Month and what that meant like to you. Do you want to go into some of that? But then the second question is, do you ever think we'll get to the point where we don't have to have Black History Month because we are so evolved that it's all history and we've just written it in a way that it doesn't matter who? Because also history historically is white men, right? There aren't a lot of powerful women that I grew up hearing about.
Yeah, I believe we will get to that point. Right now, I think it's important to have it because when I grew up, there was no Black history in the books. I
Right.
learned a little bit, and I mean a little bit about Martin Luther King, very
Yeah.
little. And so I came up thinking that we were slaves, we were freed, and we hadn't really accomplished much in the country outside of being free.
Right.
And then as an adult, I found out all the amazing inventions, all the amazing
Right.
contributions that Black entrepreneurs, Black scientists, Black businessmen and women had made to the country. I had no idea about it. So I
Right.
think it's good to add that to the curriculum so people understand the heritage on all sides. And
Yeah.
it's important. And there's not, like you said, there's not a white history month, but that's true. History was up
Yeah.
to this point. So now we're just making
Right.
it more broader, but I think we will in time. So, and again, people want stuff to happen so fast, and I would love
Right.
to make these quantum leaps in progress too, but these things take time. And these changes we're seeing from just the coming together of people, regardless of race, it comes in generations. It doesn't come overnight.
Yeah.
So I can see the
Right.
progress just in my time on this planet. It's been significant from when I grew up to now. Now I know there's a lot of issues. Obviously, we're seeing the issues continue to play out, but these issues compared to what they were 50 years ago, it's a quantum leap from
Yeah.
where we were 50 years ago, and we lose sight of that because it's focused on the here and the now. So I do believe we'll get to that point. You look at, I used to be I played college football. I was a huge, at a major college. So I was a huge football fan growing up. And gotten, as I've continued to mature, I'm not going to say I'm getting older. I'm saying that
No, not at
that
all.
uh, that I'm becoming more mature as time goes on, and so I just don't have as much time to spend watching football and all those things.
Right.
But there was a big controversy when I was growing up. There were no Black quarterbacks, very few. Whenever you saw one, it was kind of a big deal, especially in professional level. There was only one Black quarterback growing up, and then there was always this controversy around Black quarterbacks. and or smart enough. There were all these stereotypes until black quarterback was on a Super Bowl winning team and he contributed greatly, and it quieted a lot of those things. Now, here we are in 2020, they're talking about quarterbacks, right? They're not
Yes.
talking about black quarterback, white quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is probably the most popular player in the NFL. And people talk, and he signed the most lucrative sports deal in history just the other day.
Mhm.
And I listened to radio here in Kansas City about it, and no one said anything about him being a black quarterback. They talked about him being the
Wow.
greatest young quarterback, and that's the
Mhm.
conversation's naturally gone. So no one's talking about,
Right.
oh, he's the wealthiest black quarterback or the most accomplished black quarterback. No, they're saying he's the best young quarterback right now. He's had the best first 3 or 4 seasons of any quarterback in NFL history, and
Yeah.
he's the most marketable quarterback right now. So that's the evolution, but it takes
Right.
time, and it's taken decades for us to get to that point. So we'll get the same. We'll get to the same place
Yeah.
outside of the sports arena as well.
And I think that's interesting because I think sports and music have been kind of the cutting edge of this issue where the issue of race doesn't come up as much, but it comes up more in politics, it comes up more in certain situations. Now, obviously, there's a big push for we should support Black owned businesses more. And my question was, why weren't we always doing this? You know, it's hard, I think, for a lot of people to see, like you were saying, we're in transition. We're not where we want to be, but we're better than we used to be. And in that transition, sometimes it's clunky, right? And I think that's where people start to bring up this controversy, like the people that say, well, all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter, but that's not really what we're talking about here, you know? It's not an either or. It's
Yeah,
just that we are in transition. So how do you feel
exactly.
about that?
Yeah, and so there are just voices out there that will try to pick any type of movement apart or any type of progress
Yeah.
apart. They're going to point out this or that. And I had a post, it was interesting. Last week, I posted on IQ and EQ, and it
Mhm.
was just simple that IQ plus EQ equals the W, the win. Like this is the winning combination of using our intellect and then also using our emotional intelligence in combination, that's really successful in your personal life and professional life.
Yeah.
So of course, I get someone, oh, well, you didn't mention this and that, and, goes into all
Right.
the things I didn't talk about. And my response was, hey, we're limited to 1,280 characters on this post. It's a very complex process that I stated simply to give people something to grab onto that's valuable in 1,280 characters or less that they can actually use.
Yeah.
I mean, we can fill a library with books on both of those topics. That wasn't the point.
Right.
And so with the Black Lives Matter, I think it should be a foregone conclusion that all lives matter. And so that's not the point.
Right.
But to take that and run down a road to say, oh, well, you're excluding all these other folks, that's really not a balanced view of it. However, what I will say about it is this. I think the intent, and of course, no one asked me about this, and I didn't
Well,
get
I
any
have.
or text message, but now you're asking me about it. So my
Yeah.
viewpoint on it was I knew that because I've been on the planet for 50 plus years, I knew that there'd be people that take that and run the wrong way with it. So I think a great way to prevent that, if I would have been on the group that said, "Hey, here's what we're thinking about doing," my contribution would have been, "Hey, let's modify that just a little bit. Let's
Mhm.
hashtag Black Lives Matter too, TOO, as in
Yeah.
there's no controversy.
Right.
Who can argue that, right?
Right.
So when it's such an in your face kind of a deal
Yeah.
that people can get offended. So I've just been around the block long enough to say, hey, Black Lives Matter also, as in
Yeah.
TOO.
Mhm.
You take
Right.
the argument away, and there's still, we can still do that.
Yeah.
However, this Black Lives Matter train is really picking up steam,
Yeah.
and so I don't want to. I'm not saying anything bad about that at all.
No, not at all.
I think though, with my experience, that the Black Lives Matter too would have prevented a lot of these hurdles from being present. So that's
Yeah. And
my opinion. And I know,
yeah,
and I
no,
know that'll offend some people. Will get mad because I said that. And that's fine too.
I know. I feel like this in this podcast in particular is definitely like ooh, it's a minefield. But isn't that interesting?
Why isn't it
We
getting
should
behind us? You know, and
we
I'm
should acknowledge that though, and that's why it's themed conversations, not confrontations. We
right.
acknowledge the discomfort in these issues, and that's why I wanted to address them, because they're out there and we are not doing a service pretending that they aren't,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so,
You know,
like
in my
diving in to this hotbed and saying, I think what I'm hearing from you, and it's what I believe too, anything that polarizes is not what we want. We want to unify, not
yes,
polarize. We want to
exactly.
unify, not divide. And
Yes,
so, yeah, as you and I grapple with some of these topics, there will be people that are out there and say, oh, I can't believe she said that. Oh, I can't believe he said
yeah.
that. But
Keyboard command
hopefully, yeah, but
keyboard.
hopefully they see our heart and our intent is good, and that we want to open the conversation. We don't have all the answers, but we're willing to step into the discomfort of some of these topics and expose some of our biases, right? Uncover some of our biases, as well as step into other people's biases, and just open the conversation. There's no ill
Yeah,
intent at all. We don't want to cause controversy, even if we accidentally do.
yeah. And you know, I would add to that, Julie, that anyone that's interested in throwing rocks and bottles and fighting and shooting and looting and all that, that's not my audience. That's not who I'm talking.
Yeah,
I'm not talking to. I those folks have made some life choices that are so far afield that probably unreachable with reasonable conversation. I'm really interested in reaching people that are open to discussion and want to learn. If they're truly just wanting to fight verbally, fight physically, that's really not the audience I'm trying to reach. I'm really seeking to reach the people that are seeking to understand, right? And say, hey, wow,
yeah,
I didn't know that. That's a good point. Let me explore some more. That's the audience, which I believe that's about 90, 95% of the people, I believe. So,
yeah,
and the other 5%,
absolutely.
I just, I feel bad that they think that's the way. And history
Yeah,
shows it's not the way. You can't go all the way
right.
back to the time that, as far as early man, that's never been the way to lasting solutions.
Yeah,
Governments, groups that seize power that way, they're always overthrown, always.
yeah.
So peaceful way is the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to kind of wrap this all up, because we kind of just threw out a bunch of different issues, but I think my takeaway from this conversation has been we are in transition. We are historically not where we want to be, but we're better than we've been. And that as we transition, the hope is someday we'll have history, and that history will include white men, white women, black women, Hispanic men and women, Asian men and women, all types of people. It will just be history. And we won't have the need, for Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Nights and the different things that we see right now. And it's the same with affirmative action and quotas and Black Lives Matters, All Lives Matters, all of it. It comes down to we are trying, the vast majority of the world is trying to right a wrong. They're trying to correct these things that weren't right, that we recognized weren't right in the past, but we're not where we want to be. And so it can feel clunky and it can feel like a minefield and it can seem a little off, but being open to that, being open-minded and aware that this is a transition and we're all doing the best we can do. And yeah, going from there. So thank you for this conversation. I know it felt like a minefield at time, but it is what it is, and that's why we're here. We're here to open people's minds, to encourage people to ask the tough questions, and to grapple like we do to find the answers.
I couldn't agree more, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to have our conversations, and I think that it just opens up bigger conversations, and so that's one of the things I want to leave the audience with is hashtag conversations, not confrontations. Start your own conversation and use the hashtag, and let's grow this community and grow the conversation. And as we grow and develop, I think things will automatically and gradually improve.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks so much, Dr. Charlie.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.